This is Jack Reed Shoots the Shit with Dan Reed and Mike Reed.
Right.
I mean,
Well,
that's what it really is. That may not be the official title.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't think they'll let us put that.
It's not terribly catchy.
John T. Reed and Sons.
It's not terribly catchy, but we'll stick with it for now.
Captures
So,
the essence. I'm John T. Reed. I've written 35 books. I have a newsletter I've been writing for 33 years on real estate investment. And I have a website where I comment about headline news and military things and the topics of my books and so forth. And I'm here with two of my three sons, Dan Reed and Mike Reed. Dan is my oldest son. Mike is my youngest. This is our first podcast. We've had requests for this, so we thought we'd try it out. And we're just going to discuss whatever topics of the day or anything else that comes to mind. And we hope you give us some feedback. And if things go well, we'll get a house band, and we'll
House band.
We'll go with this. This is the first. This one might
Bruce
be worth.
Springsteen available?
I don't like him. He's from New Jersey, but
we could probably get Slash.
He never gives
10,
email.
$15.
Who's Slash?
the guitarist.
Oh, I'm from New Jersey, but I never liked Springsteen because he doesn't give interviews, and I think it's because of that old saying: "It's better to keep your mouth shut and have people think you're a fool than to open it and remove all doubt." But anyway,
all the groups to piss off first, I did not think Bruce Springsteen fans would be.
Well, I'm from New Jersey. I can do that. That's the way we talk to each other in New Jersey.
Yes, well,
if
you're from the same location, you're allowed to do that. Yes.
I'm sure if you're from the Northeast and you don't like Bruce Springsteen, they like tar and feather you.
Well, maybe Chris Christie, but I mean, Bruce Springsteen was on the cover of Time and Newsweek the same week, and he decided that was an occasion to climb over the fence into Graceland, where he was apprehended. So this is not the brightest bulb on the New Jersey tree.
Oh yeah,
this is old people stuff.
Before your time, everything's before your time.
Everything.
But well,
what about 9/11?
No, okay, yeah. As a matter of fact,
where were you?
You're sleeping.
You called our house, and Mike woke me up. Said Dan says turn on the TV.
Yes.
So we did, and we watched the Today Show. No, but anyway, what topic?
Only reason I was up early enough is I was in New York City. So.
Yes, well, he was at Columbia University.
Fortunately,
as
very far away from the location, but.
And Mike Mike was in high school then, so he was still home. Well, we were in California, 3 hours behind, but I actually learned about 9/11. People ask, where were you when 9/11 happened? I was in bed, being awoken by my youngest son, who'd been called by my oldest son. And here they are, the 9/11 twins.
I'm sure everybody wants to know your reaction to the Steve Scalise shooting. I found one headline which has been making its own headlines. Bigoted homophobe Steve Scalise's life was saved by a queer black woman. Now, if you had a choice between switching places with this author and dying, what color would your casket be?
Well, I'm a writer. I would say that guy
like a puzzle.
That guy got an awful lot of information into a very short space. He probably
Anne Brannigan.
He probably wrote
some person I have not heard of previously.
This is a she, although not that we know these days. So Anne probably wrote that with a crayon because she's not allowed to have sharp objects where she lives. But I don't really have a comment. Some things don't need a comment.
I had never heard of Scalise till this shooting, and basically she spends the first 3 paragraphs explaining why he's a bigoted homophobe with such damning evidence. Wait for it. Steve Scalise has kept company with racists.
I see.
I mean,
I would say
he's apparently spoken at a it's called Euro or something. David Duke runs the organization, and he was once quoted as saying, "I'm David Duke without the baggage," which strikes me as a very niche market to be. I'm Adolf Hitler without the gas chamber. So who does this appeal to?
Okay, in my website, I have a very popular page, which is about intellectually dishonest debate tactics and intellectually honest debate tactics. And I refer people to the federal rules of evidence there, which are quite good. And here we are. The topic is the attempted assassination of a number of Republicans at a baseball practice. And all of this stuff about speeches Mr. Scalise made years ago is irrelevant, Your Honor.
Right.
We're
She
talking
thought it
about-
was notable that of the 2 or 3 cops that I think it was 2 people engaged with the shooter themselves, and one of them was this security officer who is, intersectionally.
a lesbian, black lesbian.
Checks a couple
Yes.
non-straight white male check marks.
Right.
2 for-
Yeah, which
well,
makes her more important.
And
I
whoever
suppose.
wrote this article, where does going after someone after they've been shot and they're in the hospital rank on the intellectually dishonest? I mean,
Well, I give high praise to the 2 cops.
I got no problem with
I
this.
said the word
with the
hero
cop.
gets thrown around too much, and these guys are heroes. And one of my readers on Facebook said they're just doing their job. Sports fans, if you got a pistol and your buddy's got a pistol and the guy shooting at you has an AK-47 or a M4, whatever it is, assault rifle, your job is to get on the radio and call for help. When you charge at that guy with your 2 pistols, that's above and beyond your job description.
Correct.
So I'd say those are heroes, and whether or not, what color they are, what gender they prefer, and all that is just totally irrelevant about this discussion. With regard to Scalise, who was not only a Republican congressman, he is the majority whip of the House.
Right.
The whip is like the second in command behind the speaker, and his main job is to count votes and encourage people to vote for what the speaker wants them to vote for. But and this guy who did this, he was in his pocket when he was killed was a list of prominent Republicans.
Right.
So he may have targeted Scalise because of his role. Certainly Scalise, the cops were there because of Scalise. Those D.C. cops, those Capitol cops,
Special agents.
they don't go to where every congressman is. They only go to where the leadership goes.
Right.
So if Scalise had not been playing second base, he'd have had 4 or 5 dead congressmen probably.
Maybe, yeah.
So
well, he had to ask just to verify they were Republicans, let alone which Republicans they were.
We don't know why he was clarifying that
he was
specifically. I suppose
he was
maybe the Democrats practice at the same.
They do not. They were
don't.
holding a practice
really?
at the same time at a very
He
different
just
location.
wanted to be sure.
You're
gonna shoot people.
Well, think about this. This was not.
Don't go off half cocked, so to speak. Too soon.
But I don't have my rim shot drum here.
Yes.
So
did you leave it in your other pants?
Yeah, but the Scalise was the whip, and if they hadn't had a leadership member there, they wouldn't have had the security. Yeah. So maybe they need to give everybody a detail. Now this was not publicized. This practice. This was so this guy.
Is there any speculation on how he knew about it?
I don't
where
know.
It was?
But
it was about 7 a.m. I believe.
Yeah, well, the 7 a.m. was a couple of guys.
He wasn't
leaving.
wandering through with an AK-47. What did he have? AR-15 or?
They said an assault rifle.
Okay,
I don't
we don't know
if it
yet.
was communist or American. But a couple
Those
of
are
the
2 major brands.
A couple of the guys were leaving at 7 to go back to beat the traffic. So they had been there since like 6 or something. But apparently this guy found out, maybe from some liberal website or something, that this practice was going to be held at this particular location at this particular time and day. And so I don't understand why.
Oh, for the purposes of heckling, you mean?
I don't know.
Why would a liberal website care where the Republicans are
then
practicing?
Maybe the person who posted it was hoping somebody would assassinate him.
Well, I doubt.
What is the end
There's
of this
2
particular portion of the discussion? Who cares?
Yeah.
You throwing cold water on it. But here's the thing I want to say about this whole deal is I complained months before this, maybe a year before this, that I was concerned that Trump was going to get assassinated. I think this was back in the transition. I was concerned that
You wrote a post about it for sure.
Yeah, I was concerned Trump was going to get assassinated because so many people are saying he's Hitler, he's the worst guy in the history of the world. Hitler should have been assassinated. And if he had been assassinated, the person that did it would have been a hero.
Right.
So when you keep saying Hitler's a criminal and Hitler's going to destroy the country, or Trump's going to destroy the country, and Trump is Hitler, and all this, you are saying this man should be assassinated. And there's 330 million people in this country, and they're not all playing with a full deck. So if you say that enough times with a big enough microphone or megaphone, somebody's liable to do it. So I think maybe we could have disagreements without saying words that imply that the other party's guys are so bad that they don't have no right to live.
Well, yeah, the hyperbole has gotten out of control. The basics of politics are raise the volume until the other person is destroyed, and hasn't worked with Trump, so they're taking it to the Hitlerian level.
Exaggeration's par for the course.
Well,
and just say, he's not very good for the country. It just doesn't. It's not enough. They feel like.
Well, I've been surprised at how much ammunition he has given to his opponents politically, and they still exaggerate. Which it's like there's plenty to criticize this guy on. I mean, he's.
There's another dimension.
Just his Twitter feed.
There's another dimension. You have the partisan people, which would be the Congress people, and they're fairly responsible. Not enough, but fairly responsible. Then you get the camp followers, Democrat strategists, they call them on TV. They're little nobodies who want to be in with the in crowd. They go more extreme. But then there's a third dimension in here, and that's the media. Mm-hmm. The media, when they hear some goofball or see a post or a tweet or something that's really out there, they immediately put it on TV to get ratings. How about you don't do that?
And if you call them on it, they can say, well, we didn't say that.
Yeah. Well, how about you don't do that?
We're just reporting on what was said. And
of
course, when other things are reported, they report on other things that are said. They often give their opinion, very strong ones, and the political leanings are a little much.
What I'm saying is, I don't think that the person who says it or the person who repeats it as a media thing, puts it in a paper, puts it on TV or the radio, I don't think that person is less culpable than the person who said it. As a matter of fact, they may be more culpable because the person who said it probably said it to a rather small audience.
Yeah, it would have been.
And then you get NBC or somebody is going to rebroadcast it to gather more of the people not playing with a full deck.
Right.
And there used to be where people would run onto a baseball or football field on a televised
streakers,
game.
Yeah.
Well, they don't need to be streakers. They could just be a guy who's
fully. They don't have to be nude, correct? Yes,
clothed.
They could just be.
But they would run onto
flag
of
some
professional field where a game was being televised, and they would put the camera at them, and they would the guy would get his 15 seconds of fame. They stopped doing that because they realized it was A, encouraging these guys to do it, and B, it wasn't what the broadcast is supposed to be about. So they'll go to a commercial or they'll just talk among themselves about somebody's statistics or something. But that was appropriate behavior. They need to apply it to all these goofball whack jobs saying that Scalise deserved to be shot because of a speech he made.
Unfortunately, it's in the long-run interest of media outlets to go with the loudest, angriest, most extreme position because they're not going after legitimate news coverage. They're going after ratings. They want ratings more than they want to properly
that's a notable TV. You're talking about before the shooting.
Well, after, before the shooting, they rebroadcast things that might have inspired the shooting.
Right.
And then after the shooting, then that gets into another issue where they're going to tell this guy's life story. They're going to put his picture all on international TV. And
I saw an article on this though, but people, stuff inspiring people. Batman movie inspired the Colorado shooter, and there was a couple other examples, and I forget who the author was that wrote it, but they basically said it's not the fault of the people who gave these examples.
Well,
so you have to distinguish what you mean. It's kind of a challenging.
I would say if everybody abided by my rule, there would still be goofballs running around killing people.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example. There was a movie, probably in your brief lifetimes, not just my lengthy lifetime. There was a movie where some teenagers went out and laid on the freeway on the lines between the lanes, and the cars were zooming by them. And then some real person saw that movie and did that, and immediately got killed.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because in a real world,
I remember you talking about
people are constantly changing lanes. There was another movie where the scene in it was a movie theater, and all the people in the movie theater left the movie theater and went out and broke windows on the street around the movie theater. And that again, the life imitated art. So they cut those scenes out. They cut out the one with the white lines on the road. They cut that scene out because it inspired the copycats.
Right.
And then the Guinness Book of Records doesn't have a record on how long you can hold your breath underwater and stuff like that because So there's a certain amount of responsibility.
How
that we could,
many throwing stars you can swallow, stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's probably in there.
There's
it's literally we're going out of our way to prevent you from being a moron. All of this stuff is stupid and dumb without.
When you're starting to put a bullet through Steve Scalise's hip, that's not you being a moron. That's you hurting somebody else. So I think we could.
But the point is that's already illegal, and you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking
media in ways.
I'm talking about encouraging
it.
Yeah.
To paraphrase Lenny, it's every New Yorker's God-given right to be a moron.
Well, there's a Supreme Court decision. We have freedom of speech, and it's really great, and I'm a writer, and I love it. But there's a Supreme Court decision that said you can't yell fire in a crowded theater.
Right.
And the reason is it's likely, falsely, you can't yell.
Yeah, I think there's a loophole there.
If they're actually on fire.
Yeah, if it's on fire, you're okay. You can't falsely yell fire in a crowded theater because it predictably cause people to get trampled.
Right.
In a stampede for no reason. So by the same token, I think broadcasting or saying or rebroadcasting things that imply that somebody is so evil that he should be harmed or murdered, we could do without that. I don't think that's going to bring down the republic.
Right.
You can be pretty strong without getting into that kind of stuff. So that's my take on the Scalise thing. And the other thing is we had this big kumbaya afterward, and people wonder if it would last. Well, I think the jury's already in. It didn't.
These politicians are professional, lifelong two-facers.
Well, they want power.
They're constantly putting on a show.
They got one job to do, and it doesn't change with the shooter.
Their job is to get elected and reelected. And you don't get elected and reelected when you're the party out of power by singing kumbaya with the other guys. It's just not the whole job description.
Well, more than half of their job is to vilify the other side. That's how they solidify their base.
Right. Now this is just fundamentally what people hate about politics, is that these politicians are not actually interested in running the country in a way that benefits people. They're interested in re-election.
I think you're giving people too much
power.
Yeah, I think you're giving people too much credit. They will say that about the other side, and they'll pretend like their side is different. They don't actually do that.
I'll speak for them.
But if they did, I think you'd find all of them come way closer to the middle. They talk extremes because that's what their constituents want to hear. That's what gets them reelected.
They want power, and they would say, I have to do this or I won't be in power, and then I can't do good for the public. Yeah. So they say I have to do whatever it takes to be elected.
The incentives are not in favor of them doing what is best for the country as a whole, or even what's best for their local constituents. It's what is the best for my voters.
That brings me to another topic, which wasn't on the list today, but I believe that we should replace the Congress with what I call a grand jury Congress. In my unelected president book, it's called a citizen Congress. And I also believe we should have, for the first time, national binding referendums in this country. We are one of only 5 countries in the world that has never had binding national referendums. We have them in many states.
Being people voting to pass a law rather than the congressman.
Well, and they also vote to repeal it. In Switzerland, they're big on national binding referendums. And one of the things the public can use them for is to repeal laws. If we had that in this country, Obamacare would have been dead. After they squeaked it through by the thinnest of margins, the public would have repealed it the next year. But the national binding referendum says that we're going to submit certain routine matters, like how much tax people pay. And you're voting for everybody will pay the same. So you're voting for how much tax you're going to pay, not how much tax some rich guy is going to pay, and then we're going to take the money away from him and give it to you. We're talking about how much tax you're going to pay. So that should be decided annually by a national binding referendum. And what we would do is we would put 3 amounts there. One would be the current amount. Everybody in America pays $8,000 or whatever it is. And one would be 5% less and one would be 5% more. And the one that gets the most votes, not necessarily a majority, but the most votes wins. And what would happen is taxes would go down, 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 probably for 20 years.
Yeah.
Everybody would keep. Now, eventually, the soldiers would say, excuse me, we don't have any boots or bullets.
Right.
And people would stop lowering it. But the politicians have incentive to jack the spending up so they can buy votes. So, and the other thing, the grand jury Congress, and with regard to the national binding referendum, you could use it to repeal laws. You could use it to pass laws. You could use it to do things that politicians will never do, like reform Social Security and Medicare and all that. It has to be done.
Right.
You could also, when they do pass some goofball law like Obamacare, that at the time it was passed was widely hated. It never had a majority support until recently. Then it would have been gone. And
it only has majority support now because it's now the existing thing. It's now the status quo.
Right. Well, it's I have described politicians, especially Democrats, as being like drug dealers. They give out free samples to get you hooked.
Right.
So they constantly coming up with new entitlements, and they figure once people get used to this entitlement,
they're even worse than drug dealers because drug dealers make you pay. Politicians make you pay. Your kids pay. Your grandkids pay. They're racking up bills that will not be paid for decades.
No,
or ever.
Ever.
Yeah, or ever.
Right.
So the Democrat, their theory, their business model is to create new entitlements like Social Security was years ago and unemployment insurance and all this stuff. Create new entitlements, and people will very quickly become addicted to them, and then you can't take it away. And it works. It's worked.
And it's how governments collapse.
Guaranteed. Yeah. Yeah. You as Margaret Thatcher said, the former late Prime Minister of United Kingdom, she said sooner or later you run out of other people's money.
Right.
And there was a guy, Russell Long, I think, was a head of the House of Ways and Means Committee, and he said everybody says don't tax you, don't tax me, tax that fellow behind that tree. So there's only so many people behind the tree. The other thing, the grand jury Congress, the way that would work is that instead of electing congressmen and senators, we would pick them at random, like we do jurors, grand jurors or regular jurors. And they would not go to Washington. There would not be a group photograph. They would not make speeches. They stay in their home district, and all they do.
They wouldn't play charity softball games.
Yes, they would not. They would not be known.
Not
their
terribly
names,
important.
Their names would not be known like a grand jury. It would be secret.
Right.
And all they would do would be to read bills, and there would be a limit on how many bills you could submit to them because now these people are going to work 5 days a week. They get the holidays off, but they're not going to take a summer recess and a spring recess and an Easter recess and all this craziness. They're not going to spend 4 hours a day calling around dialing for dollars to get contributions like congressmen and senators have to do. So they're just going to go to work in their home district. There's going to be 2 chosen from each state. They're senators. There will be 1 from each congressional district. They stay where they are. Their name is not known. They go to work in their local area at the federal building or something, and they may have a little staff to help them research and stuff.
Yeah.
And they read bills and they vote on them. And the way they vote is like an absentee ballot. They mark whether they're voting for it or not voting for it, and they put it in an envelope, and they sign the outside. And
the vote, how they vote, yes, it has no effect on their future.
It doesn't even have any
career.
It doesn't have any effect on their relationship with their family and friends.
Right.
Because
nobody knows about it.
No one knows how they voted.
Right.
And when the votes are counted after each bill is voted on, the only thing that would be reported is whether or not it passed by 50% or 2/3, or it didn't pass. If it was unanimous, they wouldn't report that because then that would suddenly out everybody for voting.
Know everybody's vote.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to know how anybody voted. Even if they're not politicians, I don't want their family and friends. Suppose you're voting on reforming Social Security, and you're going to be responsible and vote to reduce the benefits.
Yeah.
You don't even want, if your family and friends are going to find out that you voted that way, you'll vote to keep.
It's like union ballots. I mean, knowing how somebody else voted is part of how they get people to vote the way they want.
Right. So the grand jury Congress and it would be like 6-month terms. So they would all be selected at random. It would have to be non-crazy and have to be U.S. citizens and I mean not U.S. citizens with a freaking driver's license.
What's your litmus test for crazy?
I
mean, if someone watches Bravo, do they get to be on?
Let's not work out every detail of this.
Right
now. Okay.
I won't discuss now how a bill.
We're not leaving this room until.
I don't want to discuss now how a bill gets submitted. You have to have some kind of a screening process.
Sure.
Because we can't do them all. But what this would do, think about it. You would have no campaigns, no campaign contributions, no speeches, no posturing, no committee hearings, on and on. All the stuff that people hate about politicians. And the incentive of the people in the room would just be to do what's best for themselves and the country.
Right.
And
Can these people talk to one another?
no,
Do they
no,
deliberate
no,
with each other? They
no,
just vote.
no. It's
Okay.
a grand jury
Yeah.
where the jurors are in every congressional district and in every state, and they don't know who the others are. No, there's no
But-
log rolling.
But
There's
juries hear both sides.
Right.
They deliberate.
But
Well,
that's
no,
that's different than
no,
a grand jury.
yeah.
That's why I said they would have a little staff to do research. But and you would have to think about it. If you wanted a bill to get passed, and also I like the Confederate Constitution. It had a provision that a bill can only cover one subject. So now we have all these huge bills. If you vote if you vote for my post office named after me, I'll vote for your post office named after you, and all that crap. Log rolling, and people will vote for.
If
a bill
that's the severity of it, then I'm not losing a lot of sleep. But
well, you go one bill, one subject.
it's more about pork than post office names, I would assume.
Well, okay, but whatever it is, one subject per bill, and you can't say
no,
I voted
I'm all
for
for
this
that.
crappy
Would that have
thing
to
it also had this good thing.
right? Would that have to be an amendment?
Yes,
Constitution?
yes, both the national
Well,
binding referendum
so-
and
the second
On the subject,
and the grand jury would both have to be amendments.
how do we the people pass an amendment? Because
Well, there's
people forget.
Well,
can't.
there's a whole process to do that. But
what is
and
it?
I'd
Why don't we
we
do
don't have
it?
to lay it out right now.
There are two processes.
Oh,
I
God.
discussed it in my book. You can either have a constitutional convention, or the states can just vote for it, and it requires 3/4 of the states. But we've had 27 amendments in history, and it's too few. We need more.
Yeah, it's sort of looked at as this impossible thing to do, but it's been done a lot of times.
And sometimes
it's
been
a
done
bit of a
really
hurdle.
fast.
You're going to have politicians fighting it if it's not in their best
If
interest.
it's a national binding referendum, politicians are irrelevant.
Correct.
The public votes. And I would also, by the way, use the electoral college. In other words, you can't just get a majority in the country like Hillary did. You have to get 270 votes for whenever there's a national binding referendum.
Right.
Because that spreads it out among the different kinds of states and densities of population. But I like the electoral college in the sense that it doesn't let California, New York, take over everything.
Well, it's a state sovereignty issue. One of the unique parts of our setup is that the 50 states have their own sovereignty in a sense. So giving them equal power on one level despite their populations.
Well, they have the Senate each state has equal power in the Senate, 2 votes.
Right.
In the House of Representatives, it goes by population.
Right.
But the grand jury Congress and the national binding referendum would almost eliminate everything everybody hates about politics, and it would eliminate all those bad incentives to waste money, spend money, borrow money, inflate money. All that stuff would go out the window.
Right. Being the president of the Jeff Bezos fan club. What were your
Jeff Bezos fan club?
Bezos? I got the name wrong.
So we're
That's
talking
great.
about Amazon.
What is your opinion of and Mike being a avid Whole Foods customer?
Oh, I basically just really big fan of the olive counter.
I went to Whole Foods once, and
once was enough.
Yes, it was. I went to Whole Foods once, and I was freezing. And I said to one of the people who worked there, I said, "What in the name of God are you doing with the temperature? What is it, 62 in here?"
You're supposed to be wearing a scarf.
And he said it's to keep the produce fresh. I said, Safeway has a produce section. They don't freeze the whole store. They don't freeze the canned goods because of the produce section.
They have to justify the prices by maintaining the AC at full blast.
Well, I think
I can tell you, I was
62. My car doesn't even go.
I was confused by the purchase. I'm willing to accept I don't have information that Bezos has at his disposal, but buying 400 or so brick and mortar locations for a niche supermarket, which I've read is stopped growing because they overestimated how fast they would grow. What would be the purpose of Amazon buying this place?
Jeff Bezos is considered an enormous hero to a tremendous amount of people. I think he was the Time Man of the Year in 1999, and he's considered Mr. E-commerce. His original business model was to sell books, and he was going to save money by not having stores, and he's going to have a bigger variety than a store because a store can only fit so many books, but on the internet you can have every book known to man that somebody will sell to you. I won't sell my books to him, but So he's going to sell, and he's not going to charge sales tax in 49 states. He was operating out of Washington. No, Washington. They don't have sales tax. Or no, Oregon. Oregon doesn't have sales tax. Washington.
I'm not up to date on my state by state tax rates.
Well, I am. Washington does not have an income tax, but they do have a sales tax. Anyway, he's operating out of Washington, and he's only charging sales tax to the Washington customers. Everybody else is saving the sales tax. So his business model was, you don't have to pay the sales tax. I don't have to pay the workers. I have hardly any workers. So it takes far fewer workers to grab a book off a shelf and put it in a box and mail it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have the brick and mortar expense of buying the building or leasing the building. I have a whole lot fewer employees per 1,000 of sales. I don't have to charge sales tax except on Washington State customers. So this is my business model. That worked. And he discounted. Books are commodities, meaning if you buy a book from A or B, it's the identical same book. So when you get the identical product from two different sellers, it's a commodity. And that means you buy from the lowest price guy. So that was his business model. It made sense. I understand that. Now he's buying 460 Whole Foods stores, which are known for being expensive. People joke that it should be called Whole Paycheck. So here he is, Mr. Cheapo, selling everything cheaper than everybody else, and he's going to buy a 460 store brick and mortar chain of high-end, politically correct food. Now I could see him going with the politically correct because he's that kind of guy. But what in the name of God is he doing? There's a big difference between selling lettuce and selling books.
Right.
You get a book, you put it on a shelf, you can leave it there for 3 years.
They don't sell lettuce; they sell kale.
Whatever. That stuff
has to
sell premium lettuce.
Whatever, it's
premium
still
organic lettuce.
Is kale gluten free?
It's still going to rot in like hours if you don't move it.
We still need to open a store that's extra gluten.
Gluten World.
Yeah. Well, he should have, instead of having gluten free, he should have gluten free. We don't care about gluten and all the gluten.
Fried gluten, Agent Orange Frosties.
Yeah, gluten, deep fried gluten balls. But anyway,
open the politically incorrect grocery store.
Well, he's trying to take over the world. Like today, books, tomorrow the world. Well, if you're going to take over the world, you can't get into niches like Whole Foods.
Unless you get into all of them.
Okay, but again, what is the business model here? He got rid of brick and mortar.
Maybe
stores.
we'll find out. I don't know.
Do we know what Whole Foods profit margin is compared with a normal grocery store?
It's got to be higher.
No,
normal groceries have razor thin
margins. Well, it was higher when they were doing well, but lately haven't been doing well.
Right.
So
because it's a bit of a fad.
Well,
maybe partially,
you can't tell. Some things that seem like fads hang around. Anyway, he saved a ton of money by not charging sales tax in 49 states, and that was a big attraction to his customers. Now he's got.
Is that still allowed though?
No, it's still allowed, but he built warehouses all over. The Supreme Court decision was, if you don't have a physical presence in a state, you don't have to collect sales tax there. And now he's built warehouses all over the place, causing him to have physical presence in other states. And then he so now he has to charge sales tax, which reduced his competitiveness. Matter of fact, I calculated it once. The amount of sales tax he was going to have to collect was bigger than his profit margin. And I said, well, poof.
Well, there you go.
I think what Bezos is doing with Amazon, people think, well, he's a mad genius, so he has his story would be, well, we're constantly plowing money back into the business, and it's really going to pay off big in the future. I don't buy that, and so do a lot of other people in Wall Street don't buy it. I think what he's doing is it's not a business model, it's a finance model. So he can buy Whole Foods, he can buy partial foods, he can buy
fractional foods,
he can buy Nigeria. He can buy whatever he wants and claim it's some great investment that's going to pay off in the distant future. And his moron shareholders will say, "Great, keep it up, Jeff." So
why does it keep going?
He doesn't need a strategy.
Why does it keep going?
Because of the idiot investors who think buying Amazon, they think Amazon is going up in value.
Why is Amazon the only one of the major big companies?
I don't know. Amazon seems, well, there's another thing he does. He calls his company customer centric. And my response is,
Customers wallet centric.
no, we really kiss up to our customers.
I have
And
Amazon Prime. It's great.
My
Steve
response
has
is,
it. Our other brother.
my response is, Jeff, you can't be customer centric because you are a middleman. As a matter of fact, you can't even be a middleman on the internet because the internet's function is to eliminate middlemen. And you've eliminated, borders and a whole bunch of other people.
Right.
But eventually, you're going to be you're the biggest.
Well, why not?
And
Why,
you're going to be eliminated.
Why hasn't that happened yet? Why hasn't Google Shopping unseated them?
I don't know.
I could tell you from my own personal experience, it's much easier to use Amazon than the Google Shopping features.
Well, here's the way I think it's going to happen, but I can't tell you when. The internet now runs on a language called HTML, Hypertext Markup Language. Hypertext Markup Language in a search engine gives you a little box, a little rectangle, and you type in it. And then they do the search for what you typed in the little box. The problem is you get back all sorts of results you don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, a metaphorical use of the word.
Right.
If you type in the word parachute because you want to buy a parachute, you're going to get as one of your results, probably one of the top results, what color is your parachute?
Yeah, you could be looking for a skydiving book.
Yeah, you're looking for skydiving.
I don't know who would be looking for a book on skydiving, but if you were, you would get this. You would get this golden parachute book.
What color is your parachute? Which is about changing jobs, changing careers. So what they should do is switch to the XML language, extensible markup language or something. In the XML language, instead of a search box, a single search box, you would get like a form. Like you would say, I am interested in buying a book. And up pops the buy a book form. And there it says title, author, price, publisher, subject, copyright date, all that stuff. And you fill in whatever you want. So you would put under subject, parachuting, parachute jumping.
Right.
Now you're not going to get what color is your parachute because there's a corresponding form that's been filled out by the publisher of that book. And in subject, they put career change.
Right.
So what that would do is if the search engines like Google and Bing adopted the XML language instead of the HTML, it would turn the search engines into Amazon.
Right.
And it would take you straight.
Yeah, XML is very common. It's used for a lot of things. It hasn't been embraced in this fashion, obviously, because Amazon's still around. But
Amazon's got so many other benefits.
XML is a tagging function. How do you prevent people from falsely tagging their stuff in a world where everyone's trying to get to the top of the search engine rankings by any means necessary?
Well, I don't think it would pay off to falsely tag it because the individual...
So Google could have a similar algorithm.
Forget about Google. The individual customer...
Whichever search engine.
The individual customer is going to get pissed when they see it's been falsely tagged.
Well,
but I think Amazon, if you go to Amazon and do a search, I think they are using XML. So what
to some degree, or some variation
for their internal search engine, where you want to find.
Well, everything's tagged with what it is, what category, what.
Well, everything
is
everything is. I want to buy X. Okay, so you're already into the I want to buy instead of I'm doing research about metaphorical uses of the word parachute. So it's already an I want to buy, and then they ask you, do you want to buy books? Do you want to buy clothing? Whatever. So they're doing that XML kind of thing. But what I'm saying is Google and Bing could do that. And it would turn the entire World Wide Web into an Amazon where you say, I want to buy a book on parachutes. And you're going to get results that are going to be books on parachutes, not books where they use parachute as a metaphor. And you're going to go straight to the manufacturers. And now Amazon is going to have to buy a parachute from a manufacturer and resell it with a markup. And they're going to have to compete in that search results with a guy who's the actual manufacturer and who can afford to sell it cheaper. So the internet eliminates middlemen. Amazon is about 95% a middleman. So they have eliminated other middlemen, but they in turn should eventually be eliminated because all we need is a search engine. We don't need Amazon. For me to buy my books, you have to come to my website. And Amazon, if I'd probably sell more books through Amazon, but I would make less money because they take too much. But this should happen. It should have happened a long time ago. I don't know why it hasn't. Google is a very smart company with all kinds of smart people. I don't know why they haven't done this. But this would just push Amazon and anybody else aside, that sells multiple products, because the World Wide Web will take you right to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer can always be cheaper than the middleman, and can always make
You
enough
do have
money.
a list of running predictions of companies that will fail. That is, I don't know of any of them that have actually failed. You predicted Facebook will dissolve.
I didn't predict it. I said they don't have when they went public with their IPO. I said it's a free service. Now they have since figured out how to monetize it.
And Twitter's been having trouble doing that.
Yeah, Twitter, and then I badmouthed Groupon, but I don't like predictions. I don't think I said Groupon will fail on this date. I think what I said is they got a piano teacher as a CEO. Their business model is to offer discount coupons. Why can't everybody do that? Why can't Amazon do that? Why can't Google do that?
Right.
Who
You're saying they don't have
Groupon?
some exclusive
They don't have a secret recipe like Coca-Cola.
right?
They don't have a copyright like Microsoft does on their software. They don't have a patent like Apple does on their iPhones.
That was the same logic you applied to Facebook. Anyone can do what Facebook does. There's no restriction on somebody else just making their own Facebook, competing with Facebook.
There are other competitors, and there's a thing called network effect. If you have a lot, and I use Facebook, if you have a lot of users, then your thing is more valuable than the other guy who copies your exact way of doing it, but he doesn't have the users. Right. Somebody called it an installed customer base, and I said, well, I'm a Mac guy, and it's hard for me to switch to PC because all my files are in Mac and all that. But you can switch from Facebook to something else in a nanosecond. Twitter used to be really hot, and they're getting a lot of help from Trump, but they're still apparently struggling. And there are plenty of failures. But my thinking, and maybe there's more to it, and I'm missing something on a business model, is you got to be able to do something better than anybody else. You got to provide a better value than anybody else, and your method has to be something that cannot be copied by other people. One of my classmates at Harvard Business School, Bobby Half, started Crown Books, and Crown Books discounted. He said, if you pay full price, you didn't buy it at Crown Books. And I used to tease him at the reunions about that. He has a Philadelphia accent, which I used to have. And he said, books cost too much. And at the reunion, I said, hey, Bobby, my books don't cost too much. And he was selling my books. But he decided he's going to discount books. Every other bookstore was selling them at full price. Mm-hmm. So he decided he's going to discount them. And I said, Bobby, is there a reason why they can't discount? Your formula is out in the open. Your secret recipe is I sell books for less.
You announce it in your commercial.
Yeah, I sell books for less than the other bookstores. Well, okay, they cut the prices, and then who needs you? And that's what happened. But anyway, a business model, you have to have a better value than other people are offering, and you have to prevent people from just copying how you do it, so that they're providing the best value. So you get into Facebook. Facebook has a little bit of cachet, but Facebook could, some of these things, they're hot one day and then something happens, like a privacy hacking or something, and all of a sudden
MySpace was big, and then Facebook crushed them.
Right. Okay. So what's to say Facebook won't get? And Facebook doesn't it have an image now being like for older people or something?
Well, yeah. So Facebook, at least with younger groups, I we got a babysitter, and just younger people in general at the gym and stuff. A lot of them don't have. If they have Facebook, it's because they had to, or they're using Instagram and Snapchat and.
Well, I think I read that teenagers were on Facebook.
I have both of those apps, but I never use them because I'm one of the fogies.
Yeah. Well, it's the classic. It's cool, it's hip, it's the new thing until your parents are on it, and then
right.
Exactly.
Then you're gone.
Yeah, kids are growing up and their parents are on Facebook.
Well,
and they don't want to be on Facebook, or they don't want to restrict their privacy and have their parents go, "Why'd you restrict your privacy?" And we're not going to do it. We're going to go to this mysterious Snapchat that my parents can't figure out.
Facebook, it is literally more. Your parents can now see it because they're on it, whereas before your parents couldn't see what you were doing, what you were posting, and now they literally can.
Well, yeah, people weren't going on there for the privacy. It become an issue. You don't go to the place where your parents hang out. You run off somewhere else.
You have clothing chains that are hot for years, and clothing is generally a young people's thing. You have clothing chains that are hot for years.
I know old people who wear clothes.
But they don't buy it, is what I said. They bought their clothes when they were young. They don't buy much.
True.
compared to young people. But anyway, you get some clothing chain comes out, like a Banana Republic or something, and Abercrombie or whatever, and they're hotter than a pistol for years. And then all of a sudden, boom, it's like a herd of Thompson's gazelles. All of a sudden changes direction. Like you're filming
Thompson's gazelles.
Why do you have so many
Every
gazelles?
analogy is Thompson's.
Who is Thompson? How come he has so many gazelles?
Dad watched one documentary once about
National
Thompson's
Geographic,
gazelles.
Helicopter photograph.
It's the
All
very
the
weird
Thompsons.
retention of things.
Is that like the new version of Lemmings?
Yeah.
Yes.
No,
They
they
just-
don't. They don't go off a cliff. They just they're running west, and all of a sudden they turn east, and nobody knows why.
So the Lemmings without the dying part, sort of like David Duke without the baggage.
Okay.
No?
That will get with a 7-second delay, person. Please delete that.
You heard about this Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor fight? You know it. I know you don't follow MMA.
Your phrase encompasses my entire knowledge of the matter.
Yes, well, Floyd Mayweather is a undefeated, I believe, boxer.
Isn't he
Pound-
weigh 82 pounds?
He's one of
The best of the best
fighters.
ever.
He's one of the best
Why
fighters.
doesn't he weigh 82 pounds?
120, 130, somewhere in
But
there.
he's like one of the best defensive fighters ever. He doesn't knock anyone out, but he doesn't lose either.
There's this cocky MMA fighter that he's actually since lost, but he's been
Could we translate MMA for the old people in the audience?
mixed martial arts.
And what does it mean in English?
They use
Pretty much any tactic can be done. Whereas in boxing, you must punch. You must
No
only
eye
punch.
gouging.
You can't punch certain areas.
The only
Well,
rule
MMA
of
has some rules along those lines.
No eye gouging.
But you can put people into submission. You can kick them in the face. You can do all kinds of stuff you cannot do in boxing.
Lovely.
So, anyways,
We don't have to fear for the country with this new
Conor
generation
McGregor,
coming
being the humble
the
Irishman
humble
he is.
Conor McGregor.
has been talking about how he could beat Floyd Mayweather, and due to fiscal reasons, they have actually scheduled this fight.
up. Fiscal.
They're going to get paid
Monetary reasons.
obscene amounts of money.
Everybody,
Fiscal
lots
is
of
kind of government.
sure, okay, fine, monetary reasons. So it's actually set.
Greed.
It's actually set for August. They're going to do a boxing match between
Oh,
one of the greatest boxers in history and an MMA fighter.
Who's not even
Who's never
not
boxed.
even a really good
He's never boxed.
MMA fighter.
He's known for having being a good puncher in MMA.
Well, the MMA.
But this guy's first boxing match, he's going to go up against this guy.
Yeah, you don't.
Well, his only advantage is that Floyd Mayweather is 40 years old.
This is like the American military fighting the insurgents in Iraq and Afghanistan with rifles. The enemy has rifles. They have machine guns. They have bazookas. We have tanks. We have planes.
Right.
Why don't we fight them with tanks and planes and howitzers instead of going to what they
Yeah,
are
it's
sort of equal to us?
yeah. The analogies have been pretty humorous. That was the Barstool Sports guys were talking about how they want to see the Olympic field hockey team play. The Pittsburgh Penguins on ice.
On ice.
Yeah, it's a preposterous,
See how this goes.
It's preposterous on its face, but
Yeah,
as
It's
the
dumb.
people as the people who follow it go, it's like
they're going to charge $100
this
for
is-
pay per view.
This is just it's for the show leading up to it. It's like this is it's for the tailgate.
Like quotes like this: Floyd Mayweather, the actual boxer of the two, saying MMA is for whites who can't box.
Well, that's it right there.
And one of the
And
rebuttals-
what we're doing
He's
is the
trying
whole
to-
thing.
Trying to hype the.
This is two hype men. Conor McGregor has got this fight and is going to get this paycheck only because he talks trash really, really well.
And then
Well, he'll talk trash to guys 4 weight classes above him too. He's just a talker.
He's got
after
some
he gets
incredible
beat.
lines.
After
Yeah.
he gets beat, he will say the reason I was beat is because these stupid rules wouldn't let me do my thing. Now I want a rematch.
Yeah.
Where we're going to do it with my rules.
Yeah.
And
I
which
predicted.
Floyd
I
will turn
predicted.
that down.
I predicted
Yeah,
the fight.
Absolutely.
I predicted the fight would end in a Floyd knocking out Conor, or Conor knocking out Floyd and quickly being disqualified for roundhouse kicking Floyd to the face. A
Yeah,
tactic I will enjoy seeing, but is still against the rules.
I think he'll go out on technical fouls in the first
Well,
round
but
because
the-
he keeps breaking the rules.
Well, the best take I've heard is that it is in Floyd Mayweather's best interest financially to lose this match because then there's the
rematch. Yeah, I believe there are 3 fights in the contract. Whether they all actually occur.
Well, Donald Trump once went on WWF and was in the ring, and he was going to cut his
He's
hair off
not
if he
been
lost.
WWF in like 15
It's fine.
years.
WWE is yes, it's the World
Okay.
Wildlife Federation got butthurt about that.
Yes. So anyway, but Trump was in the ring with, was it Vaughn?
Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon.
You just mixed,
Please pardon his
You
lack
just-
of knowledge of
well,
WWE.
you just mixed Vince McMahon.
Everyone listening
with Vince
is
Vaughn.
looking down upon you for knowing
I
these
can't
things.
tell those two apart. Anyway, Donald Trump went in the ring, and it was some kind of a match where if he lost, he would cut off his hair. Okay, and the whole thing was just total absolute hype. If Floyd Mayweather could get a match with Angela Merkel, he would schedule it for the money. You know,
Right.
This is not a sport. I had
Stephen
a box
Hawking.
I had a box at
Ooh.
West Point.
What are the odds on that?
Yeah.
Did he get to use his chair?
Steven gets to calculate the odds. But
Kanye West would do a fight with Stephen Hawking.
Well, apparently all of the bets have been on McGregor.
Well, that on the line,
Uh,
they're getting 10-1 or more for their money.
it's because
You got to bet like 1,000 to win 100 if you bet on Floyd.
Mayweather, at least when the odds.
I don't know the exact odds. but
I must say there is an underlying sport called boxing, and at West Point we were all required to do it. And I remember they told us, I may be getting this slightly off, but they told us we're going to box 3 1-minute rounds, and we all laughed. So they told us we're going to fight 3 1-minute rounds, and we laughed because the real boxing is 15 3-minute rounds. But
Right.
we had trouble holding our arms up, like bending at the elbow.
After how long?
Halfway through the fight.
So
It
second.
is extremely.
Anyone who hasn't wrestled or boxed doesn't understand how exhausted you can get in the span of 60 seconds.
Right.
I wouldn't equate wrestling and boxing. We had to do wrestling at West Point. I had to do wrestling in high school, and our PE teacher was an alternate. To the
Saying
Olympic
boxing
team.
is worse.
Worse isn't a word for it. It's like skipping rope. Skipping rope will unless you do a whole ton of it, that will wear you out real fast. And I'm talking like within a minute. And in boxing, you're up on your toes and you're doing all that bouncing around. Wrestling, I think is night and day different. Boxing.
I've never boxed. I have wrestled.
Okay, well I've done both.
And I was astounded at how exhausting it was.
Yeah.
And you're talking 2-minute rounds.
Well, boxing is like 10 times as exhausting as wrestling. But it's very, very difficult. You must be in phenomenal shape to be able to sustain that jump rope kind of movement. And we were West Point cadets. We had to be in good shape in general. We had PE tests all the time, and if you flunked, you lost your privileges. You flunked twice, you're out of West Point. So we were in good shape, and we had trouble. We're like swinging our arms from the shoulder as if they were dead weights. Your boxing glove was like a pendulum hanging off your arm. We were really fatigued by it, and we stopped laughing about the 3 rounds.
Sure.
So it's a legitimate sport, and I have great admiration for the people who can do it. But I probably no sport with more hype about the upcoming match than boxing.
Yeah, well, both boxing and MMA, a lot of it is the drama beforehand of them talking at each other,
which is
to each other.
Interesting that Floyd Mayweather is also famous for boring fights. His fights are some of the most boring because he's such.
I've heard argument it's boring to the layperson that doesn't. Partially, you can't see what he's doing because it's happening too fast.
The layperson is who pays
that's
the bills.
that's how they pay the bills for sure. You can't pay the bills with the connoisseur of boxing that can see the
when I was a
how
kid,
many things he dodges at full speed.
When I was a kid in the 50s, I just paused there to let you make old people jokes. When I was a kid in the 50s,
it's the back in my day segment.
It wasn't my day. I was like 9 years old or something.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a big fight scheduled, and we didn't have TV, so we had to go to a bar. So my dad took me to a bar where they had a television. A television.
Your people.
It's about 21 inches or something. Okay, black and white. So
Moe's Tavern, home of the world's smallest big screen television.
We tied our horses up outside.
Right.
And we went inside.
And it was horses up at the water trough.
Yeah. Out in front of the saloon.
Took the spurs off and went inside.
We went in. No, we don't take any spurs.
You don't take them off. What is so?
So we went into the bar.
Stupid
to watch
young
the
people.
Fight. I think it was one of the last white guy against a black guy fights. I could be mistaken. But anyway, the guy,
Race
One of the
guy,
last ones.
Race War
Floyd
1950.
Mayweather, Conor McGregor is exactly that.
Oh, okay. Well then, so that's another way they're hyping it probably. But anyway, I think the guy that won, I think he won in like 33 seconds. So you had all these people come into the bar,
Right.
and now you got pay-per-view.
Yeah, this is.
And he knocked the guy out
Yeah.
in 33 seconds. Well, that's a great victory, but you know,
Terrible
probably
TV.
got beat up by
You
the
haven't even
promoter.
ordered your
Yeah.
appetizer yet.
Budweiser probably.
No,
said
a lot of
broke his
MMA,
knees.
a lot of MMA fights end that way with like a submission or a knockout in the first 10 to
Well,
30 seconds.
You gotta watch the Super Bowl. It's gonna be 60 minutes. That
Right.
way, it could be one-sided, but it's gonna be 60 minutes of football. But a boxing match, since you have this knockout thing, and it's one day at one match.
You want him to keep fighting after the knockout?
No, I would advise
I
people.
paid my $100.
As a financial expert.
Stand that jackwagon up.
You prop him back up and continue.
Give him a helmet or something.
As a financial expert, I would say to my readers, don't invest $100 in watching a fight that may last 30 seconds.
Yeah, no, I just let one of my friends pay for it. And actually, I'm not going to watch it. Ironically, I'm going to be at the MGM. I had scheduled it beforehand, which is going to suck because there are going to be a lot of people.
MGM for what?
That's where the fight is. I happen to be in town that day.
For what work?
Just just vacation.
Oh.
It's going to be pandemonium, but I probably get to play poker with some celebrities or something that happen to be there. But
you digress.
yes. Well, anyway, on another topic we could talk about was this involuntary manslaughter conviction.
Yeah, I really don't know what to make of that.
Well, let me preface it
up.
for people who haven't even heard about it. So this guy was like 17 years old, killed himself, and he'd been receiving text messages from his then girlfriend, who I believe was 19 at the time, and he ends up killing himself. And she's been convicted of involuntary manslaughter. She was not in the room. She did not set up the car to do it. He did it all himself, but she was convicted despite this.
Him?
Strongly encouraging
him enough that he did it.
On a personal level, when you read the details, this woman is an evil person. I don't really care if she spends the rest of her life in jail. From a legal standpoint, it's an interesting case because, like I said, she didn't. Involuntary manslaughter is you weren't trying to kill the person, but you did. You're swinging a bat around or something, and you happen to kill somebody.
I would say it sounds voluntary then.
Well, okay, maybe involuntary manslaughter. I'd have to get out the legal. I looked this up once, but the difference between involuntary and voluntary. But she wasn't even there. She was telling him to do it.
Yeah.
Which is evil, obviously.
Well,
but apparently,
because he was under 18 and she was over 18.
Well, yeah. The details of that they haven't released or anything. But I had asked a lawyer friend, and she said maybe it was they went with he wasn't of sound mind. He was a minor. She was.
Well, if an adult tells a child to walk off a cliff, they're not getting convicted of involuntary manslaughter.
If it's a 6-year-old, yeah,
well, they might.
Yeah, they probably would. Well, when you look at
not involuntary manslaughter, they'd get convicted for something else.
Perhaps, yeah. It's more about the details of the conviction.
For allowing a child to walk off a cliff, without encouraging, just failure to keep an eye on them. Well, you said but you don't care if she goes to jail for the rest of her life. The maximum sentence, I believe, is 20 years.
Yeah, involuntary is not going to get a life sentence, I don't believe. Yeah.
Well,
so
it sounds like a sociopath.
Well, so what happened was
that's not a crime per se.
Before he killed himself, she did a trial run. Apparently, he'd been suicidal for a while. She started texting her friends that he was missing and this stuff and that, and he wasn't. And she started getting the sympathy. At least this is what the prosecutors were arguing. I mean, she definitely was sending texts that her boyfriend was missing, even though he wasn't. So she had this whole prefaced, I'm the mourning girlfriend kind of thing, and it somehow interested her. So once that sort of got rolling, she's like, well, now we have to do the suicide.
Munchausen by proxy.
It's a very odd case. Like I said, but again, she wasn't there. So it's an interesting conviction. from a legal standpoint.
Convicted or not, she needs to be locked up.
Well, she's a
She
screwy
is a
person.
danger to society.
Well, perhaps she's a screwy person for sure, and legally, it strikes me as problematic.
There was some element in this, I believe I read, of assisted suicide. Like he was in such pain, psychiatric.
Right. He wasn't
pain.
of sound mind.
Well, no. I'm not talking about him being of sound mind. I'm talking about him being in pain because of depression and all that. And she was trying to help, like when a husband shoots his wife who's dying of cancer. He loves her, but he wants to put her out of her suffering.
Sure.
Like maybe she was helping this guy get out of his suffering. But when you're not a medical person, you really can't be making judgments.
Of course,
like
yeah.
that.
No, she has no.
But I was not in the jury room. I was not in the courtroom. I did not hear the jury instructions. I do not know the law of the state in question on this particular kind of stuff. I heard a discussion online that there have been a number of similar cases where the person was held not guilty, but that the judge in this case, and it was what they call a bench trial, there was no jury.
Right,
judge,
no jury.
Decided. So I heard that the judge in this case said that he took account of the other cases where they got off, and he said this one crossed the line. And
so
I said, no,
was
not a jury, just a judge. You don't have to have a jury. You have the right for.
She apparently chose this.
You have the right to not have a jury.
Which is, you figure, especially with your experience, that if she'd had a jury, she, get one person to say.
Yeah, well, juries do not want to convict people by default, I would say, unless it's just blatantly evil.
Well, you were in a jury.
Yeah, and everyone in there didn't want to convict him. The only people who did want to convict him, it was for child molestation. The only people who did were the ones who said, according to the facts and according to what we were told by the judge, he's guilty.
He broke the law.
Yeah, he broke the law. He didn't, in this particular instance, he didn't harm these kids for life. They weren't traumatized. They weren't going to need therapy the rest of their lives, most likely. But according to the law, guy was guilty.
Meaning the wording of the law is specific, and what he did qualified. Therefore, he broke the law. Yeah. Therefore, he should be convicted.
But despite that, 9 people didn't want to convict him to the point where they would not say he was guilty.
Right.
So we had mistrial.
Right.
They tried him again. And they convicted him.
Well,
so this was 9 people.
Yeah, but in between the 2 trials, the prosecutor interviewed you.
Well, they completely changed. They did a much shorter case.
Well, you gave him advice.
Yes, all of us did.
And they had a mistrial the first time, and then when they did it the second time, after talking to you and the other jurors, they got him.
Well, I assume he worked through look. You don't want to convict him. You have to. You were obligated to do it, according to the law. But yeah, people don't want the idea of being responsible for sending someone to prison. Well, if they can get out of it.
This young lady had a lawyer.
Yeah.
And her lawyer recommended a bench trial instead of a jury trial.
Right.
For probably reasons that we would nod our heads and
sure.
say, well, that makes sense. Sometimes stuff happens.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't work out. Maybe she would have been convicted.
Yeah, she
maybe
waived.
Got her for first degree on if it was a jury.
By default, she has a right to a jury trial. She waived that right.
Right. So I don't.
What was the sentence?
Guilty.
It's not. No. It's not been passed yet. It's in August.
Oh, the sentence.
It could be
involuntary is up to 20 years.
Yeah, it could be 20 years, and the sentencing is scheduled for August. But I must say, I wasn't at the trial. I don't know the law of the state. I didn't hear the jury instructions.
Massachusetts.
Okay, I still don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But I really can't comment on whether or not the verdict was correct. But I think probably you can push this telling somebody to do something far enough that you share culpability. Especially if you have reason to believe the person should have like a guardian appointed for their affairs. My wife's aunt, your great aunt, is an Alzheimer's patient, and my wife has been appointed as her guardian. If you were to push somebody in that state, or maybe they're in that state,
that's a clear cut case. That's
then we were a person
a mental disability,
not of sound mind, and you're egging them. You have people that climb out on a ledge of a high building, and if people in the street are screaming, "Jump, jump!"
Sure,
jump.
but two let's say 18-year-olds arguing online, getting a little heated, and like sometimes happens on social media. And one of them saying, you should kill yourself, or
Oh,
Well,
that never happens on the internet.
right.
That
I mean,
sounds
that
a
happens
little
every
like-
day.
That sounds a little like
Happens every-
manslaughter.
So
happens
it has to do with
That's a heat of the moment kind of thing.
well, no, but telling somebody off, like you should kill yourself.
For most of
Is
it,
that a
we say,
crime?
yeah, right.
Well, but I'm saying this kind of crosses into that realm. It's like, well, where do you draw the line? I think it has to do with the fact that they were dating, they knew each other, and perhaps the diminished state of mind. But if you're online, you tell some crazy person or some depressed person to go kill themselves, are you suddenly now culpable? I think everybody would instinctively say no.
Certainly ought not to be encouraged.
Correct, but I mean, we're talking about the free speech aspect.
Well,
Somebody
I think
says something.
I said before with regard to Scalise, we can have free speech in this country and put some restrictions on basically these announcements that somebody is so bad that they ought to be assassinated, even if they don't say those words. But if you do that, we could at least say that you're allowed to say it, but the media broadcasting it to more people is
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the
newsworthiness-
original, the first topic.
newsworthiness and the need of the people to know is trumped by the danger of inspiring some goofball. We can disagree with Donald Trump without implying that he ought to be assassinated.
Right. Yeah, but talking about this stuff where, how many times a day is somebody telling someone to,
Just in gaming, every second.
Right.
As soon as-
I mean,
As soon as
and that's in one
team-
room, right? I mean,
Well,
we're not
that's
even
it.
talking
as soon
about
as
the
one
internet as a
team is
whole.
losing,
What is it?
there are a very large subsection of people who go immediately to the worst possible things. And they're technically, against the rules and against the terms of service. And if you do it too long, too much, too often, too hard, you'll get banned. But it happens
Right.
all
So the question
time.
is how many of those people should be prosecuted if the person does end up killing
Almost
themselves?
none.
My answer to that is none.
I tried to raise these children so they would not be playing games like this, but I failed.
It's more the internet than it is
Okay.
the game.
Well, we had a phrase that I heard.
People live. if you're
I'm a
on the
grown ass
internet,
man. I
it's-
don't play video games
It's
anymore.
anonymity.
That's a big problem. There's a phrase
Well,
that's
how-
been
you
around
can't
since at
blame
least when
someone.
I was a child. The phrase is "drop dead." I don't think should be prosecuted.
That's
Like-
what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's the same example. It's
I'm
But
more
when you
interested-
two
say-
people that don't know each other
Right.
just yelling at each other on the
It's-
internet,
it's-
saying the worst things they can.
It's not meant to be taken literally, and if you take it literally, you're a moron.
That's on you. But so I'm more interested in how do you protect society from that type of person, that woman who will encourage someone close to them
Give her 20 years.
to kill themselves.
Give her
Punish
20
her
years.
under the law.
But once she's out, she can do it again.
Well, she's out, but she lost 20 years.
She did this at 19. If she, she probably won't serve 20 years. I wouldn't think.
No.
Well, yeah.
Um,
For some people,
But what's the stop
prison
her
sentences
from
are
finding
deterrents.
another week?
Well,
or-
that's a huge question having to do with the entire
Yes.
penal
Well,
system.
yeah, you're talking about how much punishment is enough.
Yeah, that's
No, I'm saying we
We
have systems for sex offenders.
we don't have time.
We have the sex offender thing is getting a little too kooky. Pray some guy does something that has a 5-year
Careful.
sentence and his life his life is screwed up forever.
John T. Reed defends sexual offenders.
Well, there's a guy. It's a famous case where he and his girlfriend had sex in high school, and he was 18 and she wasn't, and the father went nuts.
Yeah.
And told the authorities, and the kid got hit with the whole thing,
Yeah.
statutory rape. He's a registered sex offender. The two of them got married,
Right.
and they're now grown-ups. And the guy has trouble getting a job, and all his neighbors have to be
Yeah.
told he's a registered sex offender. And
I've heard that some states have stuff to deal with that. If you're 18, if one's 18, one's 17, it's treated differently. Stuff
O'Reilly
like that,
was big on this stuff, and I wrote about it once. I said, look, O'Reilly is really hot on the adults doing sex things to children. Okay,
You have to
He's high on that?
I think you're gonna have to rephrase that.
well, he's big on all these laws named after young ladies.
He's enthusiastic about cracking down. Is what you're
and
saying.
I said, okay.
He's not hot about it.
I said, okay, I don't disagree with that, but I kind of am hot on mass murder.
Why? Yeah,
how
that's
does your-
his
how does-
issue. You'd rather him spend
How
it on
does
another
O'Reilly's
issue.
thing trump mine? So
'Cause
anyway,
he's Bill O'Reilly, and you're just John T. Reed
yes. Well,
with two sarcastic
I
sons.
Oh, well, which one of them has their own show, huh?
I got a show right now. He doesn't. But right here, on
He
this
still has
podcast-
a show. He doesn't have one on Fox.
Oh,
No,
did
no,
he get
no.
another one?
No, he's
Or
always
is it
had, he's
just
always
back
had
on
his
the
own
side?
radio show and podcast and stuff.
I think he got rid of his radio show. He stopped.
He does podcasts.
Yeah, I suspect
He podcasted like the next day.
I suspect he will come back. Who's the guy on satellite? Stern.
Howard Stern.
Howard Stern got run off of regular radio, and immediately got like a gazillion-dollar contract from satellite.
Right.
Because with satellite you can do anything.
Yeah, there's no.
Cable somewhere.
They don't have the terrestrial radio rules about swearing and stuff
Right.
like that.
So I think maybe and Glenn Beck got I don't know whether he got fired or he quit Fox, but he went off, and I heard he was making more money. He has a smaller audience, but he's making more money. With
Yeah,
his,
I
little
never
internet
see him
and,
anymore.
And he talked to O'Reilly since O'Reilly got fired. So it may be that O'Reilly will originally, when O'Reilly went around the country doing his shows, Glenn Beck was the partner, not Dennis Miller.
Right.
So it may be that now Glenn Beck will give O'Reilly a spot on his thing, and I think a lot of people would tune in. If the news was, hey, O'Reilly's now with what's Beck's TV station?
The Blaze.
No. I don't know the name of it.
Well, whatever. If they announced that internet TV thing now had O'Reilly, a lot of O'Reilly fans would watch it, and you could probably afford to pay a lot of money to O'Reilly, especially with like a new medium or something. Like when satellite was new, they needed a Howard Stern to draw attention to them. So I don't think Bill's done. I think he's a talented guy. I don't know what he did with.
He's
these
definitely
women.
not done. He's maybe done on certain
Well, I don't know what he did with these women.
cable channels.
But the Rush Limbaugh said that O'Reilly was run off of Fox by a orchestrated effort to make it look like there was a big grassroots movement to chase the advertisers away. They're like the fake, what they call AstroTurf,
Right.
fake grassroots outcry about O'Reilly. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, it may be they started to go after Hannity too right after, and it basically went nowhere.
Well, they're going to go after everybody.
Well, why aren't we hearing about the trials of these women suing O'Reilly? Have they all been settled,
Yes.
or did they just fall through once?
No, they all settled, and I believe there was like a confidentiality agreement.
So we can't find out. Yeah.
Yeah, I really think confidentiality agreements ought to be banned, or at least banned to a large extent, because a whole lot of wrongdoing keeps going on because they buy off the one victim. I think it's against public policy. I think it's against the public interest to allow confidentiality agreements.
Oh.
There's against public policy is an interesting concept. Like you cannot if you sue some company for doing something where you got injured, you cannot say at the trial that after my client got injured, they changed that part of the car or something. You're not allowed to say that because it would discourage people from fixing problems. So it's against public policy to bring into an injury case that we say this ball joint broke my client's neck, and as proof, they've improved the ball joint since the accident. You're not allowed to say that in the court because it would discourage companies from improving the thing.
Right, because it
so it's against
makes them look guilty.
Self-incriminating.
it's against public policy because
it'd be self-incriminating to fix things that were wrong with your product.
Potentially.
Safety
right,
reasons.
Potentially.
Right. And even though it arguably is self-incriminating, you don't want to discourage
Well,
safety improvements.
It's an admission of guilt too.
Well, you don't want
In a way.
society is better off if they fix things, and if you allow it to be introduced into court against them that they fixed it, then they will be reluctant to fix it. So the public policy operates like that in a number of cases where something isn't allowed to happen in a trial between two people because it would be too much damaging to the public in general. But I think maybe these confidentiality agreements in lawsuit settlements ought to be outlawed, or at least certain categories of them should be outlawed as against public policy. Because that has the opposite effect. It allows wrongdoing to continue.
Well, and we never hear the details, and it's sort of, I think of Ray Rice. Ray Rice, we knew he punched his wife in a hotel elevator, and we knew he got punished and he was all this thing. But then we saw the video.
Now you're talking
And
about
the video changed everything, and he got blackballed. He got fired.
You're talking about a criminal matter.
Well,
the confidentiality does not apply.
The confidentiality agreement would have taken that video and hidden it. We wouldn't have seen it, and we're missing details that the public found to be extremely relevant.
Well,
these details that are under confidentiality?
The public's opinion of a criminal matter involving two people it doesn't seem important enough.
I'm saying
my opinion of Ray Rice.
Confidentiality agreements only occur in civil settlements.
Right.
There's no confidentiality agreement in a criminal case.
Right.
So these things that are in these that are covered by Bill O'Reilly's confidentiality agreements with these alleged victims, what's in them? Like, what's the worst case? What could be in those?
The details of that he hit on them.
Okay, yeah. Well, we would get more specific. We would hear, the
I
potentially disgusting and embarrassing career-ending things.
Some of the women, maybe not the ones with the confidentiality agreements, but I heard some of the women that worked at Fox said he was kind of sexist in his talk.
Okay,
and
again,
he kind of teased them about being good-looking blondes. This is
veiled. It's sort of general. I'm talking about specifics.
Yeah, I know.
We don't know.
It may be that all the cases where they settle.
Well, you're sort of saying we should always know those specifics.
Well, maybe you leave out. He said, she said.
Okay, well, where's this?
Well,
where's this
line?
Again,
I can't go into that kind of detail. But maybe some categories of confidentiality agreements should like between husband and wife and that kind of stuff should be allowed.
Right.
But when some car company makes a bad car,
you're basically saying if the confidentiality agreement incentivizes a really bad behavior over and over and over again,
it fails to close it down.
Right.
One of my favorite sayings is in Latin, which you studied, qui male agit odet lucum, and it's from the John 3:20 in the Bible. It means he who misbehaves hates the light. And the confidentiality agreement is the light. And if the misbehavior is such that other people may be affected by not knowing about it, then the light should be turned on. The confidentiality agreement should not be allowed regarding products that a lot of people use. Whether you should allow them between husbands and wives and divorce cases and stuff is another matter.
Say goodbye.
You were a DJ. What was your sign off? You have a radio voice? A DJ voice.
No, I didn't have a radio voice.
You just had an accent?
No, I didn't have that. I had that until I recorded myself. But no, I was on KDET's 620, top of the, what do they call it? Top of the hill, building 720. Top of the rock.
I've watched Brockmire.
Top of the rock. 620, the voice and choice of the Corps of Cadets, KDET. One of only two radio stations east of the Mississippi with K as its initial call letter.
Ooh.
See you later.